Okay, I thought it'd be a good idea to record it just so you can watch this back after, maybe as you're doing your own data export and coding and things. So I'll share the link with you after. So Rosemary's here just to observe me. So just relax, engage as you would do normally in one of these sessions. So the aim of today is to go over preparation of your or preparation of data for data analysis. And it's going to be like a hands-on workshop-y style session. I thought if you had a go and followed me and what I was doing, it would help to kind of embed it in your brain a little bit as we're going along. But it's, as usual, relaxed, informal session. Feel free to stop me and ask questions. I'd much prefer that than you kind of struggle in the background and not be asking. So make sure that you do that. I'll try and cover everything that I've planned to do, but if we do, I'd rather just go at the right pace for everybody here, than rush through it. So if I don't get through it all, then I will just, outside of the session, record the last bit I planned on doing with you, and I'll send that to you after. First of all, have any of you done this before? Have any of you exported data from Qualtrics, put it into SPSS, done any recoding or anything like that? No. Okay, fine. So hopefully by the end of today's session, you will feel that you can do this with your own data and you feel confident in sort of going ahead and tackling that. I was having a look at what you've already covered on this module, and I saw a lecture that I think it was John Gillard did with you on Qualtrics, and he kind of got to the point of showing you the button to press in Qualtrics to download your data, but sort of no further than that. And obviously you've had lectures on quant data analysis as well, so this kind of fits the gap, I think, between that point of what button you press to actually then having an SPSS and being ready to do the analysis. There's a little bit that happens in between. So it kind of links to that one lecture you've already had on Qualtrics. And also I just wanted to point out the links to the wider learning objectives on your module as well. So you've got one learning objective that's around implementing a project, analysing the data, and this kind of falls in the intersection between the two. It's part of implementing the project, being able to export the data, and but also it's about getting ready for the analysis. So it kind of fulfills part of that one learning objective. And also you've got another learning objective which is around ethical practice in your projects, and we're very much going to be applying what you've said you were going to do in your ethics application. Both what you promised you'll do as far as the committee is concerned, but also you've, in your partisan information, you've said that you're going to store your data securely, you're going to anonymize it. And so I'm going to be covering sort of how you actually go about and do that today. And what we're going to learn today also has some transferable skills as well. So if you think about any job or many jobs will require a certain level of being able to feel comfortable and confident with managing data sets. And whilst we're looking at SPSS today, the same principles have been sort of checking your data, making sure that it's in the right format, that there aren't any errors in it, and being able to transform your data applies within any data set. So it could be Excel, the same rules apply. You still can interrogate the data, check it through and perform changes to it to make sure it's ready for the function it's required for. So these principles apply outside of SPSS and to other environments as well. And also in terms of ethics as well. You think about any business where they collect kind of customer data, client data, there's a requirement from the General Data Protection Act, or GDPR, that you only store the minimum amount of data required to do the job, and that you store it securely. And we're going through that today. So you're applying those principles that will play outside of psychology as well. So any questions before we get started? No? We're good to go. Right, I've got some slides. I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. Can you just see the slide on the screen? Does that come up for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So these are things that I hope by the end of today's session you'll feel that you can do and feel confident doing them. So being able to identify variables in your own data for your own project that need recoding and computing, recoding or computing. To download data from Qualtrics into SPSS and to store that SPSS data file in a secure location. To remove any identifying information that there's certain fields which I'll show you that SPSS just puts in automatically. So it's about removing those and anything else you've said in your ethics application that you'll do. And then also being able to recode and compute and rename variables once you're in SPSS. So we're going to deal with each of those things in turn. So we'll look at the first one first, which was mostly the content of your the preparation activity they asked you to do, but we'll just go through that sort of quickly now. So first of all, how did you get on with that activity? How did you find it?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad at all.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Find it okay. Do
Yeah.
you were able to follow the instructions all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So you've hopefully all got to the point where you've been able to identify whether you've got any errors in the values that have been applied to the choices that participants are able to select within each question, and that does occur occasionally. I'll show you how that occurs in a minute. And also had a bit of a think about for your own particular project, what variables you want to or need to analyze, and for those variables, are they composite variables? So as I put in those notes, composite variables are ones where they're made up of several different other variables. So you've got lots of different questions, or maybe only two actually, so two or more questions where you need to combine the responses to create a single new variable, and that single new composite variable is the one that you're going to do the analysis on. So I asked you to think about, have you got any composite variables for your analysis? And also within those composite variables, are there any questions where the framing of the kind of the wording of the question is such that means you need to recode your values so they're all consistent with each other? So first of all, did anybody spot any questions where the values applied to the choices within those questions? So say it's what's your gender, and the choices being male, female, non-binary, other. So those are the choices. And you identify any ones where those values were incorrect?
I didn't have any, no.
No. I did have one. It was for just the not the demographic information, more just the contact part of my survey at the end.
Yeah, I spotted that on yours, Tamal. Yeah, well done.
Yeah. It just went for 5 and then 6 when for the preference of what contact method they wanted.
Yeah.
So there was that.
Yeah.
And also the bit for the email and the phone number, they were both 1.
I think that will be okay.
Yeah.
That was an open-ended question, wasn't it? But there's certainly one of the contact methods I spotted in yours. Jada?
Oh yeah, I think a couple of them did miss a number 6.
Yeah.
I think that's about it.
Yeah, that's right. I spotted that in yours as well. So yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, so we will go on in a little bit to I'll show you how that happens and also how to correct it. But yeah, well done for getting that right. Also, in terms of composite variables, did any of you spot? Well, I think everybody except for Tamal should have spotted some composite variables they needed to create. And then did any of you spot any questions where you needed to recode the responses? They're all consistent, as in a high value equals a, for example, if it was around self-efficacy, so you know that's your confidence in your ability to do something. So where the coding of the question, a high value always means high self-efficacy, or a high value always equals low self-efficacy, and not a mixture of the two. So it always needs to be consistent. So do any of you spot any questions within your composite variables you need to create where there was some inconsistency in that?
I had some, I think, because some of the higher scores were like good for my study, but some of them were like bad, obviously saying different things. So I've got a list of the questions which said it was good because most of them were bad ones.
Yeah. Was that Heidi, was that you speaking then? 'Cause I
Yeah,
haven't got your faces up on screen, sorry. So yeah, I think I spotted for you sleep quality. You needed to do some recoding for that one.
Yeah, that question 8 it was, so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, great. Daisy?
I don't think I spotted any in the phrasing or response errors.
Okay, I think you might need to have a look again.
Did you?
Self-esteem and self-compassion,
Yeah.
I noted for you, needed some questions recoding.
Oh, right, okay.
And Jade, I know that you did because you emailed me about it, but pretty much all your variable. Oh no, sorry, you've got lots of composite variables, haven't you? But you
Yeah.
don't need to do any reverse scoring on yours.
No.
Yeah, okay. Saves you a job. Okay, so we'll go through how to do all of that. So first thing is first. So we're going to go through how to download data from Qualtrics into SPSS. It's a fairly straightforward task this. So if all of you go into SPSS, and I'm gonna carry on sharing my screen with you. Right, so if you find the example project that I've shared with you all, have you all got hold of that? Have you all found it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, and can you all still see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you should be able to see the example project and have that all open for yourself as well. So I'll walk you through it. It's pretty straightforward this. So all you need to do is go to data analysis. Data and analysis. And click on that. I'm not sure how Qualtrics is going to cope with all of us being in here at the same time. Hopefully it'll work okay. And then you need to click on the export and import button on the top right hand side. And then select export data. Then across the top are the different formats you can export into. You want to select SPSS. Just a quick side note here, Jada. I've created this video that I said I'd do for you on your additional bit that you need to do, because you've got different conditions in your study, haven't you, with different people viewing different conditions. And there's a selection under more options here, which you can select to, which make sure that when it downloads the data, it tells you which group they've been put into. But I've explained all that on the video, so I didn't want to go through that now for sake of time, but I'll send that after.
Okay, thank you.
It's quite simple. So yeah, all you need to do, and right now in this particular project, so click on SPSS and then just click on download. It doesn't take long, and then a folder should appear bottom left hand side of the screen. It's a zipped folder. If you just double click on it, and there's the SPSS file. So I would just click on it and then right click and copy. And then you should all, in line with the preparation activity, have set up a folder that you are going to use to store your data, which is on OneDrive.
Yeah.
So if you find that folder and then right click and paste, it will move that data across into there. So if you look at the sort of breadcrumb trail at the top of my screen here, it's OneDrive for University of Hertfordshire, and then there's the various different folders that I've created. So yours will look different to that. But the important thing is the very first thing it says there is OneDrive. So OneDrive is on the University of Hertfordshire's secure server, which is obviously password protected for your OneDrive account. It's only shared between you and me as being your supervisor. So that's a secure location to save it. And all of you put on your ethics application, that is where you're going to be saving it. So that's where you must save it. Have all of you managed to do that?
I'm trying to get it done.
Yeah, I think
that's
so.
fine. Just give you
Copy and paste it.
what? Sorry, Daisy.
Do I have to just, so I've clicked on the zip file.
Yeah.
Do I have to unzip it and then copy and paste the data, or no?
If you double click it, it should open the zipped folder.
I
Yeah,
had to unzip it to get the.
Oh, did you?
this file.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, so you might need to. Did you have to right click, Tamal, and then say
Yeah. I did,
unzip?
yeah. Unzip. Yeah.
So you might need to do that, or like with me, you might just be able to double click on it and then it just opens. But that zipped folder will be in your downloads folder on your local computer, not on OneDrive. So you need to get it out of there and move it across.
Oh, so you don't copy and paste it? Do you just have the two folders open and drag it across?
You can do that. That would work as well.
Okay. Might be a bit easier.
So this is going in the folder that we had to make.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you manage to do that, Tamal?
Yeah.
I don't think you've shared it with me yet, have you?
Did it this morning.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I haven't shared mine with you.
Okay, that should be done.
I didn't get a an email link about that, Tamal.
Oh, okay. It did
Just
say,
normally that happens by default, but I haven't had it through. So all you need to do is just share the online link to it. So you can see mine on the screen here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I click on it there, it comes up with share.
Okay.
So you could either try sharing it again there, or you could just say copy link and send it to me that way. We'll work it out after the session, but try doing one of those two things and I'll let you know if they don't work. Also, I've just thought about this actually. It's also because what will happen is you've got a version. So see this downloads here on my computer. That's where it will have gone initially. So once you've put it in your OneDrive folder, it'd be a good idea to go into your downloads and just, you can see I've downloaded it a few times this morning when I was preparing for today, but you just take the zipped folder that you've downloaded and just delete it. And then it's completely gone off your local version of your computer. I mean, obviously this is fake data, so it doesn't matter, but for your purposes, for your actual data, it will matter. You don't want a local version in your downloads.
Katie, can I just clarify? You know, you said that there were some errors in the self-compassion and self-esteem bit.
Yeah.
Could you just explain what I'm looking for? Because the way I interpret it was like, so on one of mine, it's like 1 almost never, 5 almost always. And then it's different for the self thing. It's like strongly disagree to strongly agree. But I can't see where any of those are different. Can you just explain where I'm going a bit wrong?
So you've got get yours. So you've got two composite variables you need to create. One is self-esteem and one is self-compassion.
Yeah.
And so they're made up of several different questions, aren't they?
Yeah.
And some of those questions are phrased positively and some are phrased negatively.
Okay.
So you need to have a think about when you're doing analysis, which way they all need to be consistent, so that either all framed positively or all framed negatively. It doesn't matter which, what matters is that they're consistent all the way through. So ones where they're the opposite way to the one that you want, you need to recode that, so the responses by the participant that have been given are recoded. So have a look through the questions you're using to measure self-esteem and self-compassion, and just look at the way that they're phrased and make a note of the ones that are phrased the way that you don't want them to be.
So because I mean they're jumbled, there's no like more or less, I'd say, or should I just count them all, whether it's positive or negative, and then just pick the majority and then just change the other ones?
No, well, what I would do is think about the way that how you're interpreting your data and what would make most sense to help you understand what the data is telling you.
Okay.
So if we use the example of self-efficacy I gave before, let's say it's how confident you feel. Well, in our example data has got self-efficacy in it, and there's 3 items that measure how confident someone feels to perform the plank exercise, which is a strength exercise, isn't it? Where you lie on the floor and you go up on your tiptoes and your hands to create a plank shape, and it's to work the core. So it's quite a difficult exercise to do. So it's self-efficacy for performing the plank exercise. And you might use self-efficacy in an analysis that was, does self-efficacy predict then people doing the plank for, I don't know, more than 3 minutes, let's say. So in that case, you would, the easiest way to interpret it would be if you had high self-efficacy and high behaviour. So you'd want to a high value on self-efficacy. I feel confident I can do the plank, and you'd be looking to see if there's an association then with people's ability to perform the behaviour, where a high value on the behaviour shows that they can perform it. So if you're looking for a correlation, it'd then be positive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think it'd be the opposite for me. I think I'd be looking for negative ones, because it would be those two's correlation on the nomophobia, I suppose.
Yes, I think you're right. So just try and think about, I mean, when you're doing the analysis, what analysis you're doing and how you're going to try and interpret it, or how you're going to interpret it, and what would make most sense for you. Do you want it to be a high score equals a high feeling on that variable, or a low one, and just see what kind of works best for you?
Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
That's all right. Does that make sense to everybody? And it's a little bit complicated, that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So just going.
I was just gonna say, I think I emailed the link to you now, so it might have. Hopefully, it's gone through.
Thanks, Amal. I'll check after the session. That's great. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
So back to where we were. We downloaded the data. It's on the OneDrive and in the shared folder you've created, and we have deleted the copy that you original copy on your local computer under downloads. So it just exists in this one place now. Right, let me get back to where I want to be. Yep, so that was pretty easy in terms of the kind of the second learning objective of the session, which was to be able to download data from Qualtrics and put it into SPSS. All feeling happy that you could do that with your own data?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is how to remove the IP address and location data that you get in SPSS when you downloaded it, which comes up by default. So if we go back to our folder. If you go back to your location on OneDrive where you've stored your SPSS data and just double click on it to open it. Has everyone got it open?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you can see the first few columns have got lots of data that you probably weren't expecting to see, or when you open your own data, you won't be expecting to see it. You think, well, what on earth's this? So Qualtrics provides some data that you, for most projects, you won't need, and that you didn't ask for, but just does it by default. It's actually a way of stopping it presenting some of this, which I can show you in a minute, actually, but it just does it by default anyway. So I get rid of it just because it just is untidy and unnecessary for me in terms of the analysis. So I like to keep the data file as simple as possible. But also, there's an important reason for doing this is that if you look, we've got an IP address here. And also based on the IP address, it's also put some location data, latitude and longitude. So an IP address is the location of the device used to complete the survey. Each participant's used to complete the survey. In this case, it's all the same IP address because I'm the fake participant who entered all the data. But in your data, that will all be different. And whilst on its own, it wouldn't identify somebody, it has some geolocation data in it, but it's quite broad. I think at the most it would identify maybe a town, city that somebody was sort of in, or a local region. But in combination with other types of identifying information, it could be enough to allow a person to be identified even if their name wasn't there. So it's important to get rid of it, and in line with principles of GDPR, it's unnecessary data. You don't need it to perform your analysis, so we just get rid of it. It's very easy to do it. You just click in the first column and hold down, and then move all the way across all these things that you didn't want until we get all the way across to user language, which is the last one we don't need. They're now all highlighted, and then right click and just say clear. And there they're all gone. And then we can just save that now in its current format.
Sorry,
I mean,
could you say that again, please?
Yeah, so if you just, in the top of the very first column that you want to delete, if you just right click and hold down, don't take your finger off the click, and then just move your cursor across all the columns that you don't want. And then you can take your finger off the mouse now, the button, and now they're all highlighted. And then if you right click somewhere within that group you've highlighted, you can then say click on clear.
Does it matter if you click on cut rather than clear?
If you click on what, sorry?
Well, when I did that, I just clicked cut at the top rather than clear. But mine looks the exact same as yours now. I just didn't click.
Yeah, I think basically when you do cut, it's like with Word or anything else, it allows you to then paste it somewhere else. So if you wanted to move it, you would do that. But as long as you don't paste it somewhere else, then it just remains cut, doesn't it? So yeah, that would also work.
It's just not doing it for me. It clicks on the first one, it just won't go across. I don't know why.
If you've not got a mouse, like if you've just got the tracker pad, you have to just hold it down but click on each column individually.
Oh, okay.
Is that what you're working with, Jamal?
Yeah. So
that's what I did. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you might need to do them individually, or move your finger across the touchpad, or it doesn't matter how you do it. You could even do the columns individually, just by clicking on each column and then clearing like that. Just takes a bit longer if you have to do them individually, that's all. As long as it gets the job done, that's fine.
Also, Kate, this might be a silly question, but I know you said about the IP address, like you don't know how sort of zoned in it is. I advertised my study on a Facebook group that's in St Albans, which is where I live. But if it is towns, I'm thinking that basically majority of my IP addresses are going to be the same. But will that be a problem in the data if it's not? I don't want it to all be discounted if the IP addresses are all saying St Albans. Do you know what I'm saying?
You don't want it to be. I didn't quite catch that. You don't want it to be what, Daisy?
Well, I'm thinking because obviously the IP addresses, it will show that it's all from Hertfordshire or St Albans. Will that be a problem or no?
No, not a problem. But they're kind of sort of separate issues. One is we just get rid of the IP address because it could identify somebody. So it's a principle for all the projects that you do.
Okay.
Unless you need to analyze IP address, which is highly unlikely.
No.
Then you would delete it. And to be honest, if you ought to be getting consent to collect people's IP address. So we just get rid of it. If someone hasn't consented to that level of identifying information being collected, we shouldn't be collecting it. If you need to know it for your study in order to identify the location that somebody is, I mean, to start with, I wouldn't use IP addresses, just ask them and make sure you've got ethical approval to collect data on where they live. But yeah, I just would never. I just don't think it's a good idea to have IP address in there at all for your own project. You haven't put anything in your sort of plans for your study around the geographical dispersion of your participants, have you? Have you just said they need?
No, not at all. I was just saying because I where I advertised my study, it would have been like a local St Albans group.
Yeah.
So I was saying that the IP address will be. I wasn't sure if the location of the IP address would discount them as legitimate participants of the study because it would be quite similar, but it's obviously not.
No, it's fine. No. You'd expect that if you're advertising in a local group, you'd expect people to be living, and it doesn't matter. It's not a problem for your particular study. It'd be a problem if you said you needed to have people represented different like urban locations, rural locations, seaside towns, whatever, and then you asked people where they lived, and you found that they then didn't represent those different types of groups. But even then, I wouldn't use IP address. I would just ask people and get ethics approval to do that. But it's fine for your study. So anyone not managed to delete those variables? Are we all good?
Still in the process of it, but I should be done now soon.
Fine, as long as you know how to do it, Jada. If it's taking a bit of time, you can just leave it. It's not real data, so it doesn't actually matter. As long as you know the principle of it and that you can do it, that's fine. I was saying before though that we shouldn't really collect it at all. But just it does it by default in Qualtrics, which is a little bit annoying. So I'm just going to show you. So if I go back to the survey, can you all see Qualtrics now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is back in the example project we had before. Do you remember down in a previous session we were looking down this left-hand side here, that survey flow bit? We didn't look at any of the other options, but one of them is survey options. If you click on that, you don't need to do this yourself now unless you want to. I'm just going to show you. But if you click on survey options and then go all the way down to here, security. And then down to the bottom, you can click on anonymised responses there, and it don't record respondents' IP address, location, data, and contact information. So you can put that as on. It ought to be on by default, to be honest. But yeah, you can do that, and then it just won't even collect it in the first place, and you won't even need to delete it. Right, okay. Tamal, I just wanted to mention for you in particular as well, because you're doing a qualitative study, you've used Qualtrics, haven't you, to collect some demographics data, which you're going to do some descriptive statistics on it, but also you've used it to ask people for their contact information, haven't you?
Yeah.
So when you download it to SPSS, as well as removing those first few columns that we've just been through, you also need to remove the name, email address and phone number that people have provided.
Okay, yeah.
Because you don't need that to be in your SPSS data. You're just using SPSS to analyse your demographics data. Yeah. So obviously it will stay in Qualtrics, so to allow you to continue to contact people, but for the purposes of your data analysis, you don't need that either. So make sure you delete that. That makes you in line with what you've said you'll do within your ethics application, because you've said that you will store data anonymously on OneDrive.
Yeah, great.
Okay. So back to our slides. Okay, so we're now on to the last one. So recoding errors in values assigned by Qualtrics. So we talked about this a little bit at the start, that you can have some problems with the way that Qualtrics assigns numbers to the responses that people give to questions. It's a bit of a funny quirk of Qualtrics, this. And it's something that a lot of people don't know to even look for and to check for. But it can have quite serious implications for your data. So let me just show you first how these problems arise. Let's just go back to our example project in Qualtrics. Oops. Actually, I'm going to go somewhere else. So you haven't got access to this, but so just watch what I'm going to do now. You don't need to do anything yourself. So I've gone the wrong place. Sample question. Here we go. So this is a different survey now in Qualtrics that I've got access to, and you can see that I've got a couple of demographics questions here, which are very typical of ones you might have in a survey. How old are you, and how would you describe your gender? So if I click within the first question so you can see the blue boxes around it. That's the one we're looking at the moment. And then down in this side panel here, if I go onto recode values, it brings up a pop-up that shows me the values assigned to the different responses. So you can see if someone clicks on that they're 18 to 35 years old, it gives them a 1, 36 to 44 gives them a 2, and 45 to 54 gives them a 3. Fine, looks nice. And then the one underneath, gender, if I click on recode again, you can see the same sort of pattern you might expect. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lovely. That's how you would expect it. But when we're doing our questions in Qualtrics, sometimes it's not as simple as we just type out all the responses and it all goes beautifully. Like, yeah, great, on to the next question. Sometimes you go, oh, actually, I want to put another response in here, or I want to move that around, or you want to delete something. And this is where the problems get introduced. So let's have a look at this how old are you question. If I decided I didn't want to have this 36 to 44 option, let's say, if I click on it, I can then remove that choice. And then I can go in here and I can make that, let's say 36. So it kind of all makes sense like that. And then I can choose to, we looked at this before, you can, when you're putting together a question, you can say how many choice responses you want. So I'll increase that to 3.
Mhm.
And in here, I'm going to change that to 55 to 70, let's say. Right, now, if I go back to that recode bit there, look what's happened because I've deleted one. We've now got the responses 1, 3, and 2. And then another thing that can happen is that you just move things around. So rather than doing any deleting, you just kind of go, oh, actually on this one, I don't like the order they're presented in. I'm going to move this transgender option just up one like that. I'll just do that. Oh, that looks better. So, and you go onto recode and you can see there we've got 1, 2, 4, 3, 5. So if any of you have edited your questions, which it sounds like Tamal and Jade, you probably did, there's no problem with doing that. That's normal practice. And of course, you want to change things around. Sometimes you make a mistake or you prefer a different way of presenting them. So you make a change, fine. But these problems do get introduced at that time. And if you haven't started collecting your data, you can actually use that recode command I was showing you to change them. So I could click on recode and I could just change them here. Make that a 3, that a 4, and that's nice as a 5. But if you've already started collecting your data, you can't make the change at that point. You can make the change on the survey, but it won't make any changes to your data. So you can't do it then. It needs to be beforehand. But you can deal with this in SPSS, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So why do you think this might cause a problem if you've got things the wrong way around like this? Let's have a look at another example here. Here's a Likert scale. Ice cream is the best food in the world. Okay, so if I go to recode choices, look, here's one that's wrong. We've got strongly disagree is a 1, disagree is a 5, neutral's a 2, etc., etc. Imagine you were going to do some analysis with this. What would be the problem here?
Just wouldn't be represented properly in SPSS.
Yeah, exactly. So one of your participants who disagreed with ice cream being the best food in the world, so they should be given a 2, have actually been given a 5, which would really represent that they strongly agree. Because if that was coded correctly,
Okay.
strongly agree would be a 5.
Yeah.
So it's going to completely affect in a negative way all the interpretation of your data if you do that. So it's really important. It matters much less when you've got a categorical variable like the one above, because you're not going to use it as a continuous variable where you've got a score representing a high position on a Likert scale like the one we just looked at. But it would still maybe lead you to So if you had that the wrong way around, you would, yeah, so you'd overestimate the number of people in different categories of age, if it was for age or for gender as well. So you'd misrepresent your data in terms of describing them. And sometimes we also do analysis by demographic variables as well. So we might look to see, let's say that you might do a t-test to look to see whether males and females had different average scores on SAP efficacy. And if you've got people in the wrong groups, then your analysis is going to be misinterpreted as well for that reason. So yeah, just generally speaking, it's just not a great idea to have any errors in the codes that are, or the numbers that are applied to the different choices. So we're going to go through how to then deal with this problem in SPSS. So I'm just going to show you, if we could just go back to our example. I deliberately made a coding error for the question 14. I just scroll down to it. No, it's not that one. Something weird's happened with the question numbering. Okay, yeah, so on this question here, I feel confident in my ability to do well in the next Planck exercise. It's a Likert scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And if we look at the values, we've got 1, 2, and then we're missing 3 and 4, and then we've got 5, 6, and 7. So nobody who's responded to this question will have been able, well, will have been given the number 3 or 4. They've all been given 1, 2, 5, 6, or 7. So if we now go back to our SPSS data file and look at question 14. At the moment, I've got the view that I've got for the data is with the labels turned on. So you can see the actual written label that's been applied to those numbers. So for question 14, I'm just going to expand it so you can see the one that I'm looking at. If you click on this button at the top that's got the arrows with the A and the 1 on it, it gives us the numbers instead. And you can see that nobody's been given a 3 or a 4, but people have been given a 6 or a 7, and it's a 5-point Likert scale. So we know that's wrong. Well, we know anyway, because we've, in your preparation activity, which you should do for all of your data when you're going to analyse it, you've printed off the Word version of the survey and you've identified there's a problem already. So this is another way of spotting it, but I would recommend you went about it in a more systematic way, like you did in your preparation activity. But we can see there's a problem here with our 6s and 7s, so we need to deal with that. So it's not difficult. I'm just going to show you back on our slides. So here is the question we've just been looking at. I feel confident in my ability to do well in the next Planck exercise. And on the left-hand side are the values that have been given to people for all those parts of the Likert scale. So we've got 1, 2, and then we've got 5, 6, and 7. So whenever you're going to do a recode like we're going to do now, I would recommend that you draw it out like this. So write down on the left-hand side the numbers that are in Qualtrics. So 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7, and the numbers that you want them to be, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It just helps to go about it in this kind of more systematic way to make sure you don't make any errors. So maybe I'll just give you a second just to write that down on a scrap of paper in front of you. I think that would be helpful. So 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7 goes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Everyone ready to go? If you open up your SPSS file again, then I'm going to show you what to do with question 14, the one we've got our error in. So what we do is we click on transform at the top of the screen, and then we select recode into different variable. There's another option which brings up the same dialog box, which we're not going to choose, which is recode into the same variable. And the problem with doing that is that what it would do would be to change all the responses within this question 14 here. And you would never have the original data. And the problem with that is if you find you've made a mistake, you can't go back. Well, you could go back to Qualtrics and download your data again from scratch. But if you've been doing lots of changes, lots of recoding, then you're going back to the start all over again. It's always a good idea to keep all of the original data in your data file and to create new variables for your recodes. So transform, recode into a different variable. And then down the left-hand side in this box are all the variables in your SPSS data file. And you need to find the one that we're changed, which is question 14. And if we hover over them, it does come up. You can see at the end, question 14 there. So we click on that. And then we click on the arrow in the middle to bring that one across. And you can see in that middle dialog box, it's saying Q14 into question mark. What do you want to call it? It's saying. So we give it a name. And I usually follow the format of saying, I'm still going to call it question 14, so I don't get mixed up. And I'm going to do an underscore. You can't have spaces in variable names in SPSS. So where I would normally do a space, I do an underscore instead. And then I just put recode. You might have a different way you want to do it. You could do a capital R, for example, Q14R, or whatever makes most sense to you and that you're going to remember. And then we click on change. So now in our middle dialog box, it knows what we want to do. We want to change question 14 into a new variable, and we want to call it question 14 recode, or whatever you've chosen. But then we have to say how we want to recode it. And then we click to do this on old and new values. And this is where those numbers you just scribbled down on your paper are going to help you. So you can see this box is split into two sections. There's a kind of left-hand panel, which is all about the old value. On the right-hand panel, it's all about the new value. So here we say under old values, we want a 1. If you look in what you scribbled down, a 1 stays as a 1. So old value 1, new value 1, and we add it to the box below. A 2 stayed as 2. We don't have any problems with our first 2 responses. They were coded correctly. But then we had the problem where we didn't have a 3 or a 4. So the next value in the old values was a 5. But we don't want it to be a 5, we want it to be a 3. In. Everyone following okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And then what does everyone think comes next? Anyone like to say?
6.
Yeah.
4.
Yeah. Very good. And what next?
The 7 into
7,
5.
5.
Yeah. Great. So now we've got everything. One that should look exactly like you had it scribbled on your bit of paper. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7 into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So double check it. That looks all good. We click on continue, and then we click on OK at the bottom. And then if you scroll across the right hand side of your file, you'll see we've got this nice new variable here with all the new numbers in it. So if we'd recoded into the same variable, we wouldn't have that new variable there. We would have changed this one here instead, and you would have lost the original. But say you'd done that and you realise you made a mistake, you kind of go, oh, actually I have a mistake there. You can't go back, so it's just always a good idea to do that recode into a new variable. There's a few last little bits we can do. If we go from, we're on the data view at the moment, but you can go to variable view instead, just to kind of say how you want the variable to look. So if we go into there, here's our new variable at the bottom, Q14 recode. So all the others have got 0 decimal points, just because I'm a bit finicky, I'm going to change that. So it looks the same as all the others, and it's got a 0. And also, we don't have any value labels. So before, you know, I showed you could turn on the labels and it'd tell you all the variable labels applied to those numbers. So, I mean, your analysis is using numbers. You don't really need to have the labels, but if you want to have them in there, because it helps you to remember that, you know, a 5 is strongly agree, for example, then you might want to add those in. But at the moment, regardless of what option I select, those don't come up because we haven't applied any labels to them. So you can do that in the variable view. So you can either type them in one at a time. You do this under the values bit here. You click on that box, values for your Q14, just here. And then you can type them in one at a time. So 1 is strongly blah, 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 disagree. You could do it like that. It takes a little bit of time. Or you could just find another variable that is coded correctly. So all of the other, a lot of the other variables in my data file are all the same. So have the same set. Oh, that's not the same. There we go. Have the same like responses. So if you check they're all the same and exactly how you want it, then you can just go into that, right click and copy, then right click and paste, and it just puts them all in for you. Saves you typing them out. But you can type them up if you want to, or if you struggle with that sort of copying. It's just a bit of a shortcut, that's all. So now if I go back to data view, you can see we've got the labels now applied to our numbers. So how's that with everybody? If you've managed to follow that, does it make sense? Are you struggling with anything?
Yeah, I
Just
think I
that
definitely
last
watched
bit.
back the recording during my time to export my data, but it was quite self-explanatory.
Okay, great. Good.
Will we be getting this recording straight after this lecture?
Yeah,
Or-
I'll send it straight over.
Thank you.
Right, so next thing. So that was dealing with our sort of coding errors, recoding them into a different variable in SPSS. And the next thing I want to go on to is the other thing that you were looking at in your preparation activity was, we've talked again about this bit already to a certain extent, was when you've got some questions that are framed the wrong way. So Daisy, you were asking your question about that, weren't you, and how you sort of work it out. So here's a bit of kind of a concrete example for you, and this is from the example survey that we've been looking at. So in my example survey, I've got 3 questions that I'm going to use to measure self-efficacy for holding the plank position. So they are as follows. I do not think I will do as well as I would like in the next plank exercise. Doing well in the next plank exercise will be easy for me. It will be difficult for me to do well in the next plank exercise. So imagine you're somebody who has never done the plank exercise before or tried it and found it really difficult. You're going to be someone with low self-efficacy for the plank. So think about how you'd respond to these questions. I do not think I would do as well as I would like in the next plank exercise. You'd strongly agree with that. Okay, so you'd have a high score. Doing well in the next plank exercise would be easy for me. You'd strongly disagree with that. So you'd have a low score on that one. It'll be difficult for me to do well in the next plank exercise. Yeah, I think it will be difficult. High score on that one. So you can see the problem with this kind of, when they're phrased differently, is that it introduces problems in your data. You need them all to be consistent. It doesn't matter whether a high score means low self-efficacy for everyone or a high score means high self-efficacy for everybody. That's not a problem. It's a problem when they're inconsistent in this way. So one person who is low in self-efficacy should be giving a high score on everything or a low score on everything, and not a mixture of the two. So where you've got this, you need to do a recode on some of the questions, the ones that you want to change. And I was talking to Daisy about how you identify which ones you want to change, and it's to do with how you want to interpret your findings. So think about which ones need recoding. Maybe put a little star next to them on your paper survey, so you know which ones need recoding. I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. Just before I do that, I'll explain why you sometimes do have them like this. There's a couple of reasons. One is that sometimes when you're writing the question, it just makes more sense. It will be easier for a participant to interpret the question and what's been asked of them if you phrase it in a negative way or a positive way, or at least inconsistent with the other one. So sometimes we put a question in there knowing that we're going to have to recode it, just because it reads more nicely when it's phrased in a different way. So we know we're going to have to recode it, but we just take that hit because we think it might be more easy to understand for our participants. Another thing is there's a problem sometimes with surveys, particularly long surveys, where people will continue to will take part in the survey just to gain credits, like through Sona, or just to receive a voucher of taking part, but have no intention of actually reading the questions properly and responding appropriately. And they'll just keep ticking on the same answer all the way along, just keep saying hi for all your questions, or strongly agree for all of them. So if that's something you're particularly concerned about, sometimes we deliberately put these things that are framed incorrectly so that we can identify people who are doing that, and then we might exclude them from the analysis if we strongly believe that they weren't responding with care to all the different questions. So you might do it for that reason as well. So as I mentioned, the first thing to do is identify the ones that need recoding. So in my case, for this particular study, I want high score to mean high self-efficacy. So that would mean I needed to recode questions 15 and 44. I'm going to do a bit of a time check, actually. How are we doing? Oh, gosh, we're coming right up to the time. Okay. What shall I do? I think I will create a little video for how to do this next bit then, because I don't want to keep you longer than I've said that I will. This next step is not difficult at all. It's basically the same principle as before, doing the recoding to a different variable. And as before, you would just list the numbers as they appear in the set and how you want to change them. So for us, it's just a complete switch around with a 1 is 5 and a 5 is 1. So you draw it out like that and do the recode, but I will explain it step by step in the recording. And then the next bit that we haven't managed to cover as well is how to create a composite variable as well. So I will show you how to do that. But if you've got any questions, there we go. Yeah, so if you've got any, so the recording I send you on how to do the recode when things are reframed incorrectly, or if you've got any questions on how to create a composite variable, then just get in touch with me via email. So when you're watching the recording, it doesn't make sense, just get in touch with me. That's no problem. I can always have a short session with you to go through anything, or I can reply by email if that's sort of easier. But yeah, have you got any questions on what we've done so far, though, the bit we just got up to? Has everyone been able to follow that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah? Are you feeling like you can apply it to your own data? At least up to the point that we've got to. Do any recoding of any errors?
Yeah, I just have a quick question, because I've got on one of my questionnaire parts, I've got 28 parts to that questionnaire, and I've got each sort of section of the questionnaire that one of them relates high sort of means high and high means low on the other ones. So because obviously yours was recoding sort of the separate thing, am I allowed to sort of recode the separate parts? Because obviously it's not the whole question that I'm recoding, it's just the parts to it. Will it come up sort of the same? That's what I'm trying to say. That makes sense.
I'm not sure I fully understand.
So I don't really know how to. I mean, I can show you this. This is my long questionnaire.
Yeah.
So I've sort of got a list here of like the ones that need recoding.
Yeah.
Because obviously I have 3 main questions, but the first question is split into 28 parts, obviously, of the questionnaire, and I only need to do 8 of those parts of the questionnaire recoding, because the other ones mean the same thing.
Yeah, so you've got several composite variables, haven't you? Is it like 3?
Yeah, is that what it's
4?
called? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So for you, Heidi, so hang on a minute. You've got is it sleep quality that you're?
Yeah, the question 8, I think it was, which is the one. It's sort of, I think it's the long questionnaire. I can't remember.
The important thing, perhaps we need to have a look at this together on our own, just to make sure I'm understanding what you're asking me, and we can talk particularly about your own data. But you need to think about, for all the different questions, to split them into these questions all measure one thing, which might be sleep quality. These questions all measure something else. So you need to group them. And within that group, are there any that are framed the wrong way? So it's only within that group that you need to be, to be worried. And if you've got any in that group that need recoding because they're framed the wrong way, it's just those individual questions that need to be recoded so they're framed correctly. And in the video I'm going to make, which I'll do today, I'll tell you how to go about that. But it's following the same principles we've been through already.
Okay. Yeah,
and then the bit about creating the composite variable where you just add to, it's very simple. It's just adding together the scores across 2 or more variables. Your group, say if you sleep quality, there's 15 questions, each being a variable. You just add the scores for all 15 together to create a new total score, and use something called a compute function for that. But it's really easy. But I will do a video and show you how to do that.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, get in touch, Heidi, if you're struggling on anything. I'm happy to do that. So sorry we didn't get time to finish it all. But hopefully after I've sent you the video and you've watched it, both the today's and the new one I'm going to send you, you'll feel like you can go ahead and just tackle your own data and get it ready for analysis. But if you are struggling to have any questions, then just get in touch with me. That's no problem at all. Happy to do that. Yeah.
Am I all right to close my survey and do this then? Because I've got quite a few participants now.
Yeah.
And obviously, if I'm going to be doing it with my data, I assume I need to close the survey. And would you also suggest that after we've done it? So I think Bruce last week did a whole project lab report on SPSS like analysis. So would you suggest after watching the video you upload, then we just move on to that video?
Onto his video on how to do the analysis.
Yeah.
I mean, close your survey if you're happy that you've got enough participants. It sounds like you have. That's fine. Just do that. Go through the steps from today so your data's ready for analysis, and I think that will put you in a really good position then to kind of in your head, right, I know what I'm doing, and my data's ready, and now can switch my head over to thinking about the analysis, and then watch Bruce's video. And then obviously you'll have your own questions about your own data potentially, and we can talk about your own particular analysis, Daisy, as well some other time. But maybe have a go yourself first.
Okay.
What,
without closing it, you mean?
No. I mean once you've so close your survey, so that's your data then.
Okay.
Go through the steps today to prepare it for analysis. And then you can start to think about actually doing the analysis, watch Bruce's video, start to do what you need to do, have a go.
Yeah.
And get in touch.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, anybody? No? Okay, no. Lovely. Well, thanks for your time and good to see you all. And good luck with it all.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, Katie. How are you?
All right. Shame we ran out of time. I think in a normal circumstance, I just would have said to everybody, happy to hold on, to carry on. And they probably would have been.
I could see that was going on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame, really, because I overran. But I did think that might happen.
You're walking that tightrope between individual supervision and I don't know why my camera hasn't come on. I'm sorry, I'm having the same problem as
Jada.
As Jada. Hang on, I've got 2 screens running. Let's try going to one. Maybe that will help. Your video is we couldn't access your camera.
Oh, hang on a second. I need to stop the recording.